You can start it out whenever you're ready.
Okay. Well, the last time we met, I had mentioned that there were two building blocks that were already established, and one was the scenic designation of the McKenzie Highway in two sections from not Camp Creek, but from Walterville to Ofter Heidi Drive, and then the second section from Ofter Heidi Drive up over the McKenzie Pass loop and back again. The second portion was the establishment of the community signs. So anybody visiting the area, if you tell them to go to Vita, they'll know because there's a community sign there. Well, it's a three-legged stool, and this is the third leg of that stool. And it's part of an effort that's been going on for a couple decades. We're looking at starting reconstruction of these buildings. We're going to reconfigure the inside of them. The outside will remain the way that they are now. And rebuild the barn and rebuild the compressor building in the back. That'll give us 7,500 square feet. Each one of those buildings will have a theater in it. And it'll focus on the three themes of this site, which is the river itself, the culture of the area, and the geology. And then we can rotate those films to change the subjects, because one of the failures of this particular site was when we created it in the 1990s, we built it, people came, and they didn't come back again. So we're going to have changing virtual reality displays in all those buildings. So that's the third leg. Hopefully, now with these particular meetings, this will be a focal point. When people visit here, we can tell them what's to the west and what's to the east, and hopefully get them to either extend that particular visit or come back again and go to all the different businesses and learn more about the McKenzie area and tell other people about it as well. And one thing, before we get going too far here, Jerry with the Vita Community Center has been a big part of this process, and so is Cliff Richardson from Locals Helping Locals. We have them to thank for this actually coming to be and for you to be here today. And you said they know about everything right here?
So I have a doctor's appointment that I couldn't change. So I'm going to scoot out, but you have handouts. So I just put on that piece of paper what the Vita Community Center, how it supports arts and culture in the area. And if you notice, there's two things I want to point out. The mark your calendar, because we're already doing arts and culture at the Vita Community Center. So we've got a concert on May 19th and one on June the 9th. Don't miss those. And then we have another one in August, on August 25th. And then the other thing is at the very, very bottom, and anything else the community wants. We're open to ideas, and there's just we have no limitations on what we can do. So you've already experienced maybe a wine tasting or an artisan's fair already, but if you can think of something, we can do it. So that's my spiel, and now I'm off to get my eyes fixed.
Now we'll turn it over to Kevin and Amy.
All right, thank you, Ken. Hi, everybody. My name is Amy Haas. I'm with Rural Development Initiatives. We're a nonprofit that is based in Coburg, but we work in the Pacific Northwest, and we support rural communities around community-led economic vitality efforts. And so you are coming to the second of a community listening session. RDI, Kevin and I have been working closely with Ken and with Cliff and with other people in the region, where we have understood that there is an interest in organizing regionally around economic development. So we are facilitating these listening sessions, and this is really a way for to support the Chamber of Commerce to really understand what people want to see in this region around economic development. So this is kind of looking out in the long term, and then finding ways to maybe a structure to support that work, and different ways to make progress in that work. So if you don't have, you can grab these. There is a third listening session. This one is focused specifically on arts and culture. The last one, on May 30th will be focused on nature and recreation, and that's taking place in McKenzie High School. You're welcome to come to that one as well. It will probably have some overlap with what's going to be talked about here, but also a slightly different focus. And you are also welcome to hand out those flyers. If you want to grab more and hand them out, you're welcome to do that if you like. I think just a little bit about why we're doing this. I like this diagram. There's a diagram on one of your handouts where it shows, we have learned that there's a lot happening in this community around, the economy, and so there's a lot of really good efforts, and we like this. And so there's a lot of movement. There's a lot of people with good ideas. There's a lot of things that have been happening for a long time, but there isn't currently, and it sounds like there hasn't been for a while at least, a structure for coordinating a lot of these efforts regionally. And so this is what this arrow shows. Sort of like if you coordinate, there are some benefits to that. You can promote one another's businesses. You can make sure that you're not overlapping in your efforts. You can access certain types of funding more easily. So there's benefits to doing this, and that's I think our process on this sheet is on the back. And the process, I'm going to go over it briefly now. We'll talk about it more later in the meeting. But the step one is just community input and learning. So that's what we're doing now. We're just listening to what different community members have to say, what their interests are, where their priorities are. The second step is community prioritization and organization. So if the community wants to move forward, then the next step in this would be to convene community meetings, talk about what came up in these listening sessions, and then have community members kind of prioritize, like, oh, we really want to focus here and here, and these are our goals, and this is where we want to get in 3 years, and this is where we want to get in 10 years, et cetera, et cetera. And then the third step is formation of some kind of organization to carry this work forward. And we are thinking that this region could find a lot of value in a Main Street type of organization. And so Kevin, who has a lot of Main Street background, is going to talk quite a bit about what that looks like and what the Main Street designation has to offer. And then the last step is, once there's that organization in place, then it's easier to access resources and implement things in a coordinated way. So which doesn't mean that you can't be doing things earlier, but it's just that process that we've seen that happen in communities before, where once communities get really organized, then they actually can really move forward in a more, with quite a bit more momentum. So I think our agenda for today is over here. So we're doing the introductions and overviews. So Kevin's going to talk about the Main Street approach. We're going to do quite a bit of asset and challenge and opportunity brainstorming, and then we'll talk in more depth about this process and potential for leadership and organization, and then that will be the end of the meeting. So, any questions so far? No? Okay, I will.
Actually, I have a question.
Okay.
I am under perhaps mistaken belief that part of the discussion today was going to focus on rebuilding businesses that were destroyed in the fire. Am I totally in another universe?
That's not so much of a focus today, and I guess we are not in a position to really, I think, do a lot about that. So, I mean, not that I think that could be part of the conversation. I think the reason that there's an interest in this, in the Main Street approach and in organizing, is that this valley has suffered a huge blow from the fire, and there are businesses that are struggling. So I think we want to make sure that this is an inclusive conversation that looks at kind of the long-term economic recovery of the region, but we're not specifically talking about resources for specific businesses that need recovery support. Does that make sense?
Yeah, the answer is
Okay.
simply
So,
no, I'm
Amy-
wrong.
Okay.
I think that what would be helpful too is the business that needs to be redeveloped is discussed of what you want to do, what the vision is, so that we can collaborate on the growth of the vision that we can all help each other with.
As far as
Because-
building after the fact, you can talk with me, and I don't know if Cliff has got insights that the locals helping locals, but we're both plugged into some of the groups that are working on it. We can tell you what's available and not available right now, and maybe keep you in mind when something comes up that is available, and we're happy to, I know I'm going to do that. I know Cliff's personality is probably happy to. I'm volunteering, I'm sorry. He probably has an appointment, so we can't make it, but if he does, then that'll be awesome. How's that? Did I make you a nice
We'll work it out.
Okay.
It's gotta go to the eye doctor.
Okay, great. Well, I want to spend a few minutes talking about the Main Street structure for a lot of this long-term community and economic development work. Do you all have this handout, or does anybody need this one? I'm going to be talking to it a little bit.
I can grab it.
Here, I'll give you, Amy, I got them here.
Oh, you got it.
Okay, move some around a little bit. Okay.
Take a couple minutes and just go around and say who the heck we are.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
okay. Yeah, we can take a minute.
We were told that you would all know each other,
Yeah.
and that we didn't need to do introductions.
Whoever told you that's
Oh,
wrong.
yeah.
Okay. So maybe let's just go around the circle clockwise. And Johnny, we'll start with you. So if you just want to share your name, and if you're with a business, or if you live here, just share what brings you here. So Johnny, if you want to go first, we'll go around. Start with you.
Johnny Helfrich, J. Helfrich Outfitter Rafting and Fishing Trips. That's it?
Great.
That's it? That's all I want to know is who people are and what
Yeah.
they're here for.
Carol Tannenbaum, McKenzie River Lavender, and treasurer of the McKenzie River Chamber of Commerce.
Tourism.
Tourism focus too.
Yep.
Brittany Mason, McKenzie Community Partnership, and a local photographer on the river.
Ken Engelman, McKenzie River Reflections, and president of the Chamber of Commerce.
Judy Cassad, real estate broker and also an artist and resident of Blue River.
Betty Kohler, Ike's Pizza.
Art Arianis, The River, which is a proposed destination event center at the east end of Blue River.
Cliff Richardson, lifelong resident of the McKenzie, with Locals Helping Locals and McKenzie Community Track and Field, also with McKenzie Community Land Trust.
Connie Richardson, board president of the O'Brien Memorial Library that's being built in Blue River. So if you haven't been through Blue River recently, it's looking pretty cool. And also a resident, live near him.
Okay.
Still.
My name's Chris LeBoy. I'm with McKenzie Community Partnership. My business burnt down at McKenzie River Mount Resort. In the fire, I've only been here about 20 years, so they had me beat big time. Time-wise, we've done a lot for fire recovery. Now we're doing economic development work. And we're excited about the potential future and what we can all do together.
I'm Emily Gumbert. I live here. I don't work here. I am retired. I've lived here with this guy here for about 4 or 5 years. Sometimes it seems like 4 or 5 decades. We were very profoundly impacted by the Holiday Farm fire, and I'm not going to reference what you did. And we're just here to learn as much as we can about what's going on. We live in Vida, up Good Pasture Road.
My name's Tom Maddock. Lived here for a while. I'm the proprietor of Maddock Machine, which was affected by the fire.
You want to firefighter?
You're not going to say that, huh?
Okay. Thank you, everybody. My name is Kevin. I live up in Beaverton. For my business, I do a lot of rural and regional community development work, especially with small main streets, helping start up community organizing around supporting main streets. And so I'm working with rural development initiatives for this visioning process that we're working through right now with you all. But I wanted to take a few minutes before we dive into the arts and culture industry and what the future of that industry could look like, direction you all might want to go with that. I want to talk about this Main Street document first. Now, you might hear us talk a little bit about Main Street, and you might think, oh, well, we don't have a Main Street, or this whole region is the Main Street, or you might have different thoughts about what that might mean, or you might have different reactions to it. when we talk about Main Street, we're often talking about the structure of the organization of how economic development work and how visioning work is really organized, and how people work together to move forward and supporting their communities. And so on this sheet, we'll look at the back here, there's this chart up at the top. So it goes Main Street America, then there's an icon that actually says Washington Main Street, and then there's local communities. The Main Street approach is a model of economic development that's been used for several decades to revitalize communities all across the states. And there's a coordinating national Main Street organization that helps provide a lot of guidance and expertise and direction that's passed down through state organizations. So we've actually got Oregon Main Street, which is housed within the Oregon Parks and Rec Department, that helps provide guidance to about 100 different Main Street programs in the state. And these range from programs that are in larger, more urban areas to small towns to even regional Main Street programs. And so when we frame this, I'm coming at this with the perspective of you all have several different communities here, but you share the same lifeline, the same corridor that runs right through the heart of each of these communities. And we want to focus on what it is that ties these communities together so that you all can work collaboratively towards your vision for arts and culture industry, or if you come to the next one, the nature and outdoor recreation industry. What do those look like and how can we work together for those? Oregon Main Street just started up a new rural and regional Main Street approach that's really great for regions just like y'all's. So there are two of these that have just started up recently. One is coordinated by the Oregon Frontier Chamber of Commerce. I want to say they have 9 or so Main Street program, 9 or so communities that they provide guidance to. And these range from like Antelope, Oregon, that has like 25 people in it, to smaller towns, but it allows these communities to share resources and to work together and lighten each other's loads so that, like Amy pointed out on one of the last flyers, people are pointing in a similar direction and not crisscrossing and kind of going opposite directions, or it's just much more organized and direct. Now on this page here, you'll see a kind of a star shape. The Main Street approach and why it's been so effective for revitalizing a lot of specifically downtown communities, but now getting more into regional communities, is because it's a very comprehensive and well-rounded approach for injecting some life into these towns. And there are 4 points to it, and these are shown in different colors here. We'll come back to the blue, but there's design, that's in green there. It focuses a lot on the look and feel of a community. So some of that is sometimes historic preservation. It can be art, it can be murals, or it could be sidewalks and streets. Basically, if people are able to focus on like making a place a good, enjoyable place to be and comfortable and like visually appealing, people will be more likely to spend some time there. Promotion is all about sharing the story of your community. So this is often like in Beaverton, where I was the director of the Main Street program in Beaverton, and I remember when I first got there, you would ask people where downtown Beaverton was, and they would say, "Oh, I don't know," and they would be in downtown Beaverton when they said that. So you had to promote that, like, there is a place to be, there is something going on here, there are events or like the McKenzie River Reflections, like there are stories that can be told here that can highlight what's special about these places. Like, why are they worth caring about? What are we proud of here? Organization is in yellow here, and this is really focused on making sure that there's a good leadership structure, good volunteers, good base of funding, just good overall collaborative effort that can move some of this work forward. And that's a really foundational piece to make sure everybody's organized and go in the same direction. And then lastly, the blue one, economic vitality. We're talking about some of this within these focus groups and the visioning process. This is often focused on what is the future of a Main Street or of a regional collection of communities look like with regards to its different types of businesses and business opportunity. So when there's a focus on each of these different points, then you're able to really have a well-rounded approach that supports several different aspects of a community so that it can really have that rising tide that lifts all boats, as they say. So when we talk about Main Street, this is kind of more what we're talking about, and not just a individual community, but rather what is the structure or the organization, framework, or leadership that can help carry this work forward after we work through this visioning process. Hopefully you all have a good idea, like the direction that you want to go after we work through all of this, not today, but by the end of the process. And then having that good leadership structure can make sure we know what the goals are, we know how to prioritize it, and then we can like really leverage those resources and go get those resources. And that's where we'll come back to process here at the end to talk about, like, we often hear people wanting to figure out, like, oh, how do we get more resources to support us right now? And like there is a need for that, but there is also, how do we plan for the future and have the resources in the future too? So we'll come back to process in a little bit. But that's overall like Main Street strategy. There are some great videos and resources online that I'm happy to share out. If you make sure you leave your contact information, we can get that shared with you all too. Amy, do you have anything else you want to add for Main Street?
Maybe just that, when we see that communities can access resources, it's when they're very organized and they have a lot of community input that shows that they're rallying around certain priorities and certain efforts. And so I think that's another, it's just, I think that's, communities naturally always want to get resources. And rural communities absolutely need resources, but it's just, it's really difficult to access them when there's a scattered approach. And so I think this is why we see that this is a useful way of organizing it. And there's different ways of organizing, communities and regions, but this is just maybe one of the most accessible and successful one that we've seen recently.
Yeah. And as an example of how that can work really well, with the Oregon Frontier Chamber of Commerce as an example, with their several different communities that they support through the regional Main Street program that they offer. They had different buildings in each of their towns that wanted to go after some grant funding to restore some of their buildings. If they would have gone after those funding, after those resources individually, they might not have had the grant writing skill set or the time to be able to invest in it on their own projects. But they worked together and worked with the Chamber of Commerce to get some more of that professional support and to get some more of that structured plan to go after funding. And they were able to get funding for several other communities just by having that good leadership structure. So we'll touch on that a little bit, but we're going to spend most of today talking about arts and culture and the future of that industry. So Amy will lead us through this next section.
Okay, so we're always interactive. We don't like to lecture a lot.
Yeah, that'll be the end of lectures.
Initiatives. So this next part's going to be interactive, and today's focus is on the arts and culture kind of economy, or the arts and culture scene in the Valley. And so what we're going to ask you to do, we have three boards up here. We have assets and strengths, we have opportunities, we have challenges. And do you want to hand out the flip charts and markers to people? Stickies. Yeah, stickies. Yeah, give everybody a sticky stack and a marker. We're going to ask you to think about, first we're just going to focus on assets. What are the assets that you have in this region to support the arts and culture sector? And the other thing that you'll notice is we have these types of assets that are pinned up there. And so there's kind of the obvious assets like, the community, the Fighting Community Center, or, there's like kind of what's, the things that you, like buildings, there's certain things that you think of. But we like to talk about assets in there's different types of assets. So like, money is an asset, financial assets, that's a kind of obvious one, and building assets, that's another pretty obvious one. But then there's maybe some less obvious ones like There's like these different forms of, sometimes we refer to them as capitals, but they can also be assets. So like human capital or human assets or individual assets, like somebody's skills. Like, are there artists in your community? Like that's an asset that you have. Are there organizations or are there partnerships that help the region to get, this, that can be used, that could be an asset to get, to build your economy. So there's, sorry, I keep leaning over you here. Here, I'm gonna grab.
I've got some, got them
Oh,
right
you
here.
have it, okay. Here, why don't you give me one and I can hold it up.
And I can give some, maybe.
So like natural capital, that's a really huge asset for this region, especially when you're talking about the recreation economy, but also an asset for the arts and culture economy. Let's say I talked a little bit about financial, the social, that's that kind of partnerships, that's people's relationships. There's intellectual capital, that's when there's knowledge or skills. So that could be the skills that the existing artists bring. The built capital, that's the built environment. Political capital is influence.
He's in the other room.
Okay.
Close the door.
There were some in here before, so hopefully they're.
I might be trapping ourselves in.
I know, yeah, exactly. Maybe they'll stay put. So I guess the point of this is that when you think of all of the different assets you have, don't just get stuck in the buildings and the money. Think of like all of the different assets that your region has already. And another reason we like to think of building from your assets is that at RDI we're very, very focused on having communities build their economies based on what they already have and not trying to get resources from the outside to come in. Like, we want a business to come in. I mean, that's good, and if you can do it, it's great. But what's that?
We desperately need some to come in.
Yeah, and that's, and that is fine. Like, I'm not saying that it's wrong, but I'm saying if you only focus on that, then you'll miss kind of what's here, and you might not support the existing businesses that are already here. So I think we start with like, what are the existing businesses? Who are the entrepreneurs that we might be able to support to start a business, maybe a much needed business to fill a gap? And then after you've sort of gone down those two paths, then you look and think, okay, then what do we need to draw in from the outside to pull in to really round out the economy? So that's kind of the order of operations that we look at economies, especially in small towns where it's like hard to attract a big company to come in. So yeah, write down all of the assets and strengths, and then you can just come on up and stick them up on this assets and strengths sheet, and then we'll have you, and then we'll move on to something else. But first, for now, just start with your assets.
Arts and
Oh,
culture
right on.
mindset.
Okay.
So these are assets.
Yep, assets, especially if they're arts and culture related.
Yeah, put it anywhere you want. Stick it up here. If you see that if something's already up here, you can cluster it near there.
Show off.
Yeah, if you're fast enough, right? Oh, we got two of those.
We got this one.
Yeah, just stick it right next to it, yeah.
Yeah, if you see something new that's already up there, just stick your sticky note with it.
Sure, just stick it in here.
But just beside that, look
That's
for.
if we have one.
Because if there's fire dangers, you can't have the chainsaw.
No, I know.
That's the big if.
And last year with the smoke hitting in the middle of August, it killed
And if you need more
us.
sticky notes, let me know. I've got more.
You buy you one.
Okay, so then what I want you to do now is write all of the challenges that you can think of. And you can put those gaps, like, you know, somebody mentioned, you mentioned like that you need certain types of businesses. So you can put that up here. So start thinking about your challenges and your gaps and write all of those down. Think of the biggest ones you can think of and start with those first. And then you can. Challenges and gaps.
That's good to me. Yeah, and you would get the place that you did. Rural isolation. I think it's one. I could be completely off base here.
Kevin, you can see if there's
Oh.
things to be done. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yep.
I didn't do yours, I'm sure this time.
Yeah, you can put it up.
Yeah, I see this one.
Rural isolation, bakery, eateries, business space, year-round organics. What is this one?
Anti-growth,
Growth, okay,
Chocotee and Baxter Acres.
okay. Community conflicts, few financial resources, size of population. Okay.
Okay, yeah, thanks.
I'm surprised I haven't seen county zoning.
You would have had it, except they're looking at fixing that, at least in Blue River.
Oh, yeah?
And that may help the other small communities as well.
However, we're all with bated breath.
That's fine, you want.
We are totally waiting on bated breath of that.
Nobody reading my writing.
Yeah,
Oh, financial resources in here.
They've got your shoe's name on there, right?
Sketch.
I bet these are too. That's what,
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, and well, maybe they also have neighbors.
Parks?
Oh, he's filtering all your stuff to make sure it's all politically correct. Removing ones that he doesn't like.
Well, the river fishing. northeast to A, the pirate.
Kind of, yeah.
It's close enough,
Okay.
it's good.
That would be a self-interest. That's a different term, for sure.
Kevin, while you're moving sticky things around, who besides Oregon Frontier, you said there were 2 communities?
Yeah, the Northeast Oregon Economic Development District.
Blue
just-
Mountains or out of Baker? Or
I don't remember, Baker? I don't remember,
LaGrange,
actually.
Baker, yeah.
Yeah,
Would that be up around Enterprise and Wallowa and
yeah, out that way.
LeGrand,
Mhm.
maybe?
Yeah, well, LeGrand might have their own Main Street program, but the Northeast Oregon Economic Development District is very low, it's massive.
You
Okay,
get-
nothing.
You get Wallowa and
I
Joseph
think,
and.
I think Wallowa is one of them, is part of it.
Okay, so the third category, I think we're on a roll, so we'll just go with the third category, is opportunities. Does anybody else need more sticky notes? Does anybody run out yet? No, you still got them. There's more up here. So then the next thing, and you're welcome to also come look at what the assets and challenges are. I think the idea behind this is that you have certain assets, you have certain challenges and gaps. What are the opportunities? And sometimes, challenges can be opportunities. They might be hard ones, but the positive outlook on a challenge is often an opportunity. So maybe write what you see the opportunities. See any opportunities you have, and this could be opportunities for a new business. It could be opportunities to work together. It could be maybe opportunities you would like to see happen in the next 10 years. Maybe it's not an immediate thing, but you can also think of this as like, what would you like to see in 10 to 20
We're
years?
trying to organize by some similarities.
Here's what's fun.
Oh, probably another 4 months.
Plus, I live in Blue River. A lot of stuff going on there.
And then I guess when you're thinking of your opportunities and what you would like to see in the future, think specifically about the arts and culture sector. You can put other stuff here too, but specifically, make sure you're including all the arts and culture desires.
I don't exactly know what you mean by culture. I know what you mean by art.
Yeah,
That's a very broad term,
It's true.
It
and
is.
I'm not sure I follow what you're speaking to.
yeah. So I don't think I have a narrow definition that you need to follow. I think some things that come to mind, like I know that there's those, the history kiosks that are, along the river, so that is certainly part of what I think of as the culture here, but it could also be you could have a different interpretation of culture too, like I would
Yeah,
refer it back
one
to
of them
you
I
guys.
put up there was Archie history.
What history?
Archie. When all the people from Arkansas were recruited to come here and built the Finrock camp, they were all loggers. There was a guy who bought a bunch of land here, started a mill, and got all those people to come here, and they all lived in that community. And then they interacted with the rest of the community, became part of it, and some of them went on to become professional baseball players. So there's a whole story about that little culture that grew in that tiny area.
That's history.
Yeah, and it's a
Yeah.
part of a culture,
Yeah,
intermingling.
Some of us had to learn how to say y'all.
Yeah.
There's a whole bunch of other stuff from our, we'll leave that alone for the moment. Yeah, I grew up in Manhattan, and to me, culture speaks to habits of dress, the way of thinking, the food that we eat, the attitudes, including prejudices and biases that we have. I also had the good fortune to live in 5 or 6 what used to be called third world countries. And so culture that I grew up with in Manhattan had nothing to do except for the food that you eat, the attitudes that you have about people. They were totally different. So I'm just thinking in terms of a future for our culture. Why would I want anybody to think differently than they already do? I mean, except for political issues, which we're not going to go into here at all. And I'm sure that people who feel opposite from me politically would feel the same way. I just don't quite, kind of grasp it outside of those things that I was mentioning.
So if I could address that, I think for culture, I would say, the McKenzie in particular, obviously there was an indigenous culture before we came, Caucasian show, but that being said, it speaks to the history of how this place formed, how it came about, and there should be positives and negatives to that. Obviously, in culture, it addresses both sides of that, positives and negatives. But how did this culture of the McKenzie River boat come to be? How did the culture of the logging industry and the mining industry and other things in this river valley come to be? Or how did they change? And so that culture changed how our schools and how our populations all looked at how we deal with life. And I think maybe that's what, maybe I'm wrong, but that's kind of where I see culture.
No.
I think there is something to what you're saying about like the culture is kind of the air you breathe or the water you swim in. Like it's maybe things that aren't necessarily articulated. It's how people view each other. It's how people view entrepreneurship, how people view the arts, how people view other people of different political affiliations. Like there is something like, does this community, and so I think like kind of saying how you want that to be is also part of this if you want to articulate that. So I appreciate what you're saying about it.
I don't want everybody to think the way I do, that's for sure.
Yeah.
However I think.
So maybe there's a certain like welcoming of creative thinking or of different viewpoints, or that could be part of the culture for sure.
So we can have an open community or we can have closed communities. And in some ways, there's a lot of closeness within this valley.
Yeah.
And there are places where there's more openness.
Yeah.
So last month, the Oregon Heritage Program, which is the historic preservation cultural program within the state of Oregon, they hosted the Oregon Heritage Summit, so a conference back over in Forest Grove last month. And when I think of heritage, I often think of historic preservation because that's what I have spent so much of my life working in. But for other people, heritage often meant museums or storytelling or dress or food. Like all of these different pieces are aspects of what make our communities unique or make them our communities. And it hopefully should highlight our differences and similarities and make space for all of that. So I think one of the key points, I don't remember who said it, openness to ideas is also really great too. And that's really great for fostering a creative arts industry too. People feel that space just to be creative and explore. you got some assets.
I think one of the challenges is that a lot of folks that come through here, they come through here thinking about stopping and hiking, not necessarily stopping and shopping, because there really isn't a lot of shops you can stop along the way. Now, Lieberg has those 2 stores that hasn't sold and they're sitting vacant. Perfect opportunity for on the route through to have a gallery or something that would really make tourists want to stop. But a lot of the folks, like we moved here because of fishing. My husband's a fly fisher. He's fished all over the world, and he fell in love with the McKenzie area rather than Newburgh. and so that's what we were drawn here for. Well, fishing is guided boats and going, on your own out and about. So that's not as much of interacting, building economy outside of if we had a fly fishing shop where you could buy all your flies and those sorts of things, which we have now in Walterville. But also you have on the other side of it, you have a lot of retired folks that buy properties and are only here during the off season for like a summer home. So a lot of the properties, and having been in the chamber from 2010, there's 10 communities and they're all tiny and they're spread apart 50 plus miles. So there's not as much of that center of hefty interaction. It's all teeny tiny little spots. So to try to do these communities, we have the community centers, one in Vida and one in the McKenzie Bridge or Rainbow area, which is perfect for that. And then also the Grange and also the church there that Jerry has a lot of events at as well, right? So we do have those places to go. My thinking is how much can this area really grow? Because in real estate, I hear a lot of things. I put comments up there about organics. I would have sold a house, but they like being in Eugene where they can get organics year round. That wasn't for me. I'm not a big organic person, but that's just what you hear, different things that people want that we don't have. And but it may only be one small little bit of people, and we have these little small groupings of communities.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to stop now.
So Judy, you bring up a good important point, and if I could, that's what struck me when I heard about the Frontier community over there, and that was Spray and Mitchell and Antelope, and there's 7 or 9 of those communities, and they all have little diverse things. The Spray Rodeo drug somebody in there for a weekend. And after that, what happened? They had to join school with Mitchell. Well, look at Mitchell. If you knew Mitchell back in the day, it had a bear that was in a cage there. And that was one thing that drug people off the highway. Fortunately, the old bear went away. But if you go to downtown Mitchell now, they're connected to the Painted Hills. And Connie and I stayed a night in the old motel, our hotel.
Historic
hotel. And in the Ward's Creek, when you go in there and you think, man, everybody can hear what you're doing. Yeah, that's true. But all those communities spread their chamber of commerces, joined together, and they've got a really robust community going. It's not unlike what we have here on the McKenzie with Vida and Lieberg and such.
So what do you think made the difference?
A willingness to come together, I think. Their chambers, have their own little vision for their Main Street, the central. But as I understand it, their willingness to talk to each other and realize they have regional value and strength, and rely on the natural resources they had and the other economic resources they had.
Like a fluent, I don't know the right word, the vision of the impact visually going through a community? Is it all mix match, or does it look like it has some cohesiveness? That's the word, cohesiveness.
Well, I don't know. I haven't been there for a while through all those communities, but each one had its little frontier or whatever, and obviously probably needed some updating with the structure, just the hardscape in there, but also this, how do they attract people there for a touristy, restaurants and such as that. So, maybe you guys know more about that than I do.
I can give some examples of what they've done, and I think it's partly the people who step up are going to be doing things for their communities. This just gives a structure for people to kind of do things and get things done and coordinate. But some of the efforts that they have, I think Kevin mentioned they've done a lot of applications for grants for historic renovations, and they've gotten a number of those, which is, and that's in Spray and in Condon and in, I think, 2 other communities. So that, that's a specific building, but those building owners applied, and there was a competitive process that they curated, and then they put in some applications. They've done I think in Arlington they did a pop-up arts businesses, and so they had artists and makers of different types do this pop-up, like sheds with pop-up businesses. I kind of think of your project. And initially, a few people were interested, but then when it happened a few weekends ago, then people were like, "Hey, I want a space there. I really want a space there." And so then suddenly, a lot of the makers from the region were having this pop-up event, and so and then after the summer was over, 3 of those businesses got together and opened a permanent year-round space. Another effort that they were doing was a Picture Your Business Here campaign, where they would have like signage in empty storefronts that said "Picture Your Business Here." They would work with people, they would invite people to come on visits of the buildings to see if they wanted to rent the space. They would support them with like developing business plans. And then they had a come back home campaign where they tried to get people who grew up there to move back home, which was quite successful. So they had a number of people who grew up in the region return to the region, and those people have families, and so there was, there were more people coming, and students coming in the schools. So they did a lot, and I think like whatever this region would do would look very specific to this region, and it would come out of the creativity of people who live here, and it would be based on the priorities that people have who live here. So it may look nothing like what they did, but it's just that somehow there was this structure and there was enough support for people to actually be able to make forward steps with their, whatever ideas that they came up with that were kind of in alignment with the priorities of the region. Does that make sense? A little bit? Kind of, no, maybe not.
For that structure, now that you're chairman, because I'm going to go back, when were the Rural Tourism Studios?
2011.
Okay, so prior to 2011, the Ford Family Foundation rallied people, and that's the sign project came out of that.
Well, that came after the,
Blue River.
Well, the signs came after,
Blue River
but that was
Walk.
part of the Ford family stuff, not the rural tourism.
Right.
but Ford Family came after rural tourism.
We were talking
No.
about it at the meeting, so it was
No, because
before.
the Ford.
But then rural tourism came and we rallied, we had a really strong tourism crew on the chamber, and it's kind of like church. There's 10% of the people doing 100% of the work, and if you look around this room, ain't none of us spring chickens. And it's exhausting work, and we all have our own businesses to run as well. And that's been my concern since our tourism committee has dwindled. The membership in the chamber, hopefully you're building back up, but that dwindled. It just seems like a whole lot of uphill battling, and the same faces serve in multiple organizations. So when you talk about structure,
Yeah.
it's not there. The structure is there, but there aren't people.
Which is why I
plugged
brought up
into the
that
structure.
50-mile stretch and how small it is, and the type of people that tend to live here or live here just seasonally are not as involved, or they're retired and they don't want to do what
They
we're
don't-
doing.
yeah,
So
they
it's a
don't
very small percentage. And there's new people that come in, and when I sell properties, I try to invite them to different things if they are interested in getting involved in any way, but it's not everybody. Not everybody have the personality or the drive or want to do it. And they just want to come here and relax and enjoy what they see outside their door and go play if they want to play. So that brings back this whole economy thing. One of the struggles that we have is we don't have enough jobs here for families. the commute to town to get a job, to work, is very expensive with gas prices and time away from your family. I commuted from Blue River for 3 years into Eugene. That's 2 hours of driving a day. And it's a beautiful drive. I loved it. It wasn't that bad. But there's families that do it twice. Both parents drive in and out.
Yeah.
And their kids go to school and sports in town. So we have challenges that are due to the lack of homes and the lack of jobs and the lack of the type of people that can support all of these things.
Yeah.
So that's really a big challenge for us.
It's a huge challenge.
Yeah.
And
Can we talk through some of these? Because some of
Sure.
these are captured on the posters up here.
here's one more.
Amy, do you want to, should we start with assets or just highlight some of the challenges and then go to assets and opportunities? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, the other thing we could do is, you guys could all get up and look. Can you see can you read them from there, or do you want to get up and look at them?
Not from there.
No.
Why don't you get up, why don't you all get up and spend a little time looking, and then just note some things that you'd like some things that strike you.
See what stands out.
Yeah.
So you've already organized them in some way.
Organize a
Well,
little
I
bit.
mean, I would say it's
It might be
partial
easier for you to just go up and start reading off of some, because then we can
Yeah,
all
first thing I
participate in
noticed,
that.
somebody on
I can
the
start with
kayak.
assets.
Okay, yep, sure, okay.
Okay, I'm going to start with assets up here. I'm going to pull it forward too.
So then we're not getting up to look. Let me say get up to look.
We did say that. We threw you for a loop. Thanks for following directions. It was our fault.
Nothing else on our rule of thumb.
Yep. Okay, so these are only partially organized by some things that were similar. When I was moving some things around, there were some categories that really stood out as seeming to be very, very strong assets in your area, at least based on some of the information you all shared. One of these I'll highlight first is just people, the arts community itself. Had a lot of comments like local artists, variety of artists, art classes, art guild, supportive community for local artists, large local art community, local musicians, artist guild again, a lot of artists on the river. So just seeing some of these responses, what I see it just as somebody who doesn't live here is you've got at least a high concentration of people who care about art or culture or who are spending some of their time and energies in this, and that alone is a heck of an asset. Amy highlighted the puzzle pieces, the puzzle diagram, and one of these, well, there are a couple that touch on people there and personal skill sets, but arts communities, supportive local artist environment goes a long way in a lot of this. Down here in the bottom corner, there's a lot of the natural environment, which could be included in the culture here, the outdoor culture. River rafting, kayaking, fishing, lakes and parks, hiking trails, scenic bikeways, hot springs. There was a lot there for your environmental assets too. In our last focus group, focused more generally on the regional economy itself. One of the topics that came up a little bit there too were the opportunity for educational tours or historic tours. And I saw a little bit of that here with some of your assets you were down with historical wayfinding, historical signage, boats and guide boats. So the opportunity to teach people about what makes this place special. And a lot of that tied in with the natural environment too. Lots of space for art that could be tied in with potentially not having enough arts businesses or something on the flip side of it, but lots of space for art, so that's good. Skilled workforce for natural resources, and then down here in this corner, this was a events corner, so the track and field, chainsaw festival, live music over at McKenzie Bridge and outdoor dining, annual community celebration at the track. So there were some events there. Did anybody see anything else up here or write anything down or think of anything that just want to share with the rest of the group? Maybe I didn't highlight. beautiful scenery. I couldn't read what this one said.
Oh, that's Hoodoo.
Hoodoo.
That's
Oh,
the only
okay.
winter one up there.
Okay, thanks.
I think I put 2 up there that are more challenges, like need more inns in hotels because they get booked up solid in the
Oh, yeah,
summertime.
Yeah.
And then also off-season events to draw people to them. So
Yeah.
that would be another challenge.
Yep.
We have
Yeah.
coffee stands, but you have to get out. And I think a drive-through would be really, really, really good.
Yes, okay. Yeah, so some regional business opportunity there.
If as you think of more opportunities, write a Post-it note.
Okay, I'm gonna move assets out of the way.
Serving on the Travel Lane County Board, you are not gonna get more lodging assets until they can fill up year-round.
Oh, I know.
Because we're having the same trouble in town.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
Took it to the
other than
golf course.
folks rebuilding.
The golf course.
Oh,
Yeah.
The golf course, yeah.
Yeah.
That's a huge strength.
Does somebody want to write that down so I can put it up here, please? That would be great. Okay, thanks.
All right, let's talk a little bit about challenges.
Nobody put churches up there.
And somebody wrote clinic upriver
Nobody what?
for assets and strengths. Does anybody want to call
Yes, because so I had, I have a home in the mobile home park, 55 plus, and they were really leery about being so far away from medical care. And I had a client that moved out of town, but her husband in McKenzie Bridge called the local fire department, and I heard that somebody donated an ambulance for that department, which is really awesome. And my client mentioned that her husband's life was saved at least 3 times calling that the fire department because they were 5 minutes away. They came, took care of him, and they were taken care of. Now we're talking McKenzie Bridge to Lieberg's fire station is a lot further, and that was like life-saving. So to be able to live in this long stretch of rivers, that's a huge advantage,
Yes,
just
it
to
is.
have health care, emergency care upriver.
Yes, okay.
Yeah, it wasn't an ambulance, but it was a Justina family first respond vehicle, $300,000 donation.
Wow.
First respond vehicle, okay,
Wow.
that's good to
Yeah,
know.
the problem
Thank you.
is, none of our fire agencies up here have the opportunity to transport.
Right.
They can't transport, that's a whole different level of advanced care.
Mhm.
And so, but they can maintain advanced life support until because you have the golden
And when you
hour.
call 911, they have no idea. We're at Paradise Campground. Where's that? Really? Just go up River Chase, see a sign that says Paradise Campground, hang a left.
At the GSR Festival, we had somebody who was respirating the EpiPen twice, 2 EpiPens. The ambulance went right past, because they were going to Vida.
Yeah,
And they thought we were in Blue River. I mean, they were.
So fortunately, the local ambulance showed up first and they called off the other people.
But having been a part of that emergency services in the past,
Yeah.
locals, knowing, the area and knowing the people most of the time, typically we were able to get there much, much sooner and lives were saved. Rather than that golden hour being expired, and then the people expiring because of that. So it's been a huge benefit.
Yeah. All right, so I've grouped some of the challenges here. It looks like there's communication and internet challenge. There's a kind of the configuration, rural isolation, size of population, 60 miles long. And then there's a kind of villages working together and shared vision. So there's a sort of the feature of the geography. There's something about promotion and marketing. So there were a number of them, or a few on promotion and marketing, yes? Power
Stick that
outages.
somewhere.
Okay, we'll stick this up here and make it a broader infrastructure
Sure.
category. Is something about, like, we need diversity and not enough youth. There's something about capacity, so need leadership organization, and new blood for organizations, lack of manpower for all of the work, so this is definitely a capacity issue. There's things around food, so bakery, eateries, and organics. There's, it was an interesting kind of cluster of things around trust, different agendas,
Conflicts.
Go away newcomers, community conflicts, retired folks want, you know,
Nothing
outdoor
to do.
events and seclusion, keep it the same for us. Let's see, what is this one? Antisocial. So I guess like different attitudes. This is a sort of about different attitudes maybe that are in conflict, apathy and self-interest. There's like, let's see, camping, loitering, lack of, okay, let's see. Visual beautification, drug dealers, I'm gonna put this actually in a different location. So there's kind of different social problems here. There's seasonal tourism, which is kind of standalone at this point. There's, there's lack of events for artists, retail space to sell art, business space, performance venues. So there's this kind of lack of resources for different kinds of artists. And then there's this housing, Airbnb, local jobs, issues that are here. So these are kind of the main groupings of challenges that came up. Worker bees.
I talked to 2 contractors this week, and both of them would like to expand because there's a lot of rebuilding going on. They have people show up for job interviews, and they don't come back.
Yeah.
Are they in their 20s,
What, the workers?
the ones interviewing?
No.
Well, the contractors working across our way up there face the same issue.
Yeah.
They can't, they said we would be glad to train and provide, we pay good, train these young people. We said we can't keep them because they don't have a driver's license, or they get the first paycheck and they don't show up after that, or you can't rely on them to show up on time, so we have some youth issues in trying to man the labor force.
The youngers definitely have a different
They
attitude
do.
about work being hard.
They're begging for workers.
Yeah.
Yeah, we see that.
May I ask you a housing question? How many, because that's an issue that's been brought up several times for years. So many properties were made into VRBOs and Airbnbs that there's nothing affordable for families to rent. Is that still the case?
I don't do rentals, so I don't know, but I don't know.
Are people
For
buying with
rentals.
the idea that they
I know
want to
that there's a
rent it out
problem
for
for-
vacations?
I'm sorry, what?
Are people buying properties purposely because they want to make an Airbnb or something like that?
I have definitely some investors that want to do that, yes. But most are moving to the area to live, but there's a few that definitely some B&Bs, and most all of them are retired. Very few are families. And the mobile homes go up really fast because they don't come around very often.
I was kind of surprised that one of the manufactured homes at the end of Good Pasture in that mini community there, and the Good Pasture Bridge, is an Airbnb. Because I thought the whole point was those would be built kind of like lazy days for people to
Oh, yeah, I know the
live
ones you
in.
mean, the new ones.
For
yeah.
rentals, yeah, I saw that.
Yeah.
And he reached out to us and said, hey, can you offer them? And I saw it, I'm like, that's in that little thing at the end of the bridge. And Aaron says, yeah, that's not really our
You
client.
talking about the blazing stump? Used to be the blazing stump there.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, we were worried about that because when they put that in, I talked to that owner when he was doing that, and it's a 1-bedroom. Most of those are 1-bedroom flats. Very. I don't know if it's 2-bedroom in it, maybe.
Yeah, there's a couple.
Is there? Okay. And so great. I mean, that could be a rental capacity, but even the prices he was asking for, people can't rent. And so, yeah, there's a lack of rental capacity on the river from what it used to be historically. Part of that has to be different demographics, people retiring, like Judy says, coming up. But, how do we address that? Because younger people, I've got family members, my son and some of my family can't come back up on the river and live.
Oh
Because
shoot, they
afford
can't live
lives.
in town either.
Yeah.
That's why our daughter's living upstairs.
You're right.
It's ridiculous what stuff costs.
You're right.
So I'm just going to kind of divert us back towards here. I think there's there's a ton of problems and it's really easy to get sucked down into the problems, which, I mean, you do have to deal with the problems and you have to try to address them. On the other hand, sometimes there's pretty intractable problems so that you can get mired in them, and then it can be very disheartening. So some of what we try to do also is to kind of assess, like in a future meeting, what we might do is take all of the opportunities that have come up and then have the community assess them by both the potential impact they might have, but also how feasible they are. And sometimes that gets rid of the things that are, okay, like, you know, we can't do much about this. Or this is a really hard problem, but we want to work on it because it's important. Or, ooh, this is a quick win, let's do this and we'll all feel really good about it. So I think looking at things with that lens, I think communities can find that kind of helpful to like at least be making some forward progress, even if there's these really tough challenges that are difficult to solve, you know, in a long term.
How about brainstorming on standards of expectations?
Yeah, well, so I think like we have 15 minutes left in this meeting.
I'm not saying we have to do it now.
Yeah. No, I like that. And, you know, I think like maybe what we can do now is just like go a little bit over the opportunities, but I like that suggestion of and tell me more about what you mean by standards.
Because Blue River has always looked like it had trash in everybody's yard.
Right.
And
Yeah.
Tony and I have a place where the little town is spotless. It is just so nice.
Well,
All
so
the
is that.
buildings are being renovated and it's just really a pleasure to go through there. And they have the best little cafe with the best hamburgers and
Well, maybe that becomes one of
so
the
nice.
opportunities. Like maybe it's developing standards for that could be one of the opportunities that
Is that an incorporated town?
Understand.
I don't know if it is or not.
I think it is.
Cove?
I think it is.
The little town of Cove?
Which Cove?
By La Grande and by Baker City, it's
I think it is, Judy, incorporated, which helps, yeah.
And did it go through a fire where they're having to start from the ground up?
well, the fire's helping us to have better standards because now we can.
But there's no buildings. When you mentioned earlier about, can you picture your building here, or can you picture your business here?
Yeah.
There's no buildings to post something like that
Right.
because of that fire. I mean, it's just,
Yeah.
Well,
Or
and that's
some
the
that just
challenge
went
of
on
trying to
the
bring
market.
businesses into the town because they would drive through and they're like, I don't want to invest in this.
it's getting better.
I know it is, definitely,
Yeah.
definitely.
So Judy brings a good point that we want to pencil in somewhere is in an unincorporated community where everybody owns their property and there are no CC&Rs or special codes. What kind of incentives can we do if we put this together that's going to help get some creativity and some unification and some standards?
Well, it sounds like there's both a challenge here and an opportunity.
Mhm.
So let's get those on sticky notes so that we can document them, because this is all going to get kind of folded into the future process where the community kind of looks at this and brainstorms what our next steps are. Maybe, let's see, Kevin, why don't I throw you some sticky notes?
Yep.
And do you want to do like a standard, developing standards, community standards, and then also a challenge of not being incorporated communities. So just a quick overview of the opportunities that I see. There were a whole cluster of opportunities around like art classes and workshops, local art and local businesses, pop-up vendor events, tiny business village, opportunities to, I think that's recruit artists, retail space for artists, new businesses and infrastructure, more inns or hotel, drive-through coffee stands. So there's this whole kind of like, let's get more business things happening here, especially with artists. Let's see, there's get people to table and keep them there. There's a community identity and regional power for accessing funding. There's positive sustainability. There's have great wayside rest spaces on east and west ends so folks can stop and learn what's here to see and enjoy. There's stuff about like music festivals and music and arts festivals and redesign something something events like music and art shows. So there's something about like these music and art festivals, which is related to some of this business stuff. There's like history, there's a museum of history, logging history, guiding history, mining logging, Native American, so there's a whole kind of history area that looks like an opportunity.
History.
Oh yeah, there's more history.
Dam building and highway building histories.
Okay.
Well, even the Archie stories are history.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
What is this one?
Archie stories.
That from the
Arkansas,
Penrock
Arkansas.
camp and
Oh yeah, right, okay, okay.
all history.
And then there's Discovery Center.
Business.
What's that?
Another opportunity for business.
Oh yeah, okay. And let's keep one on the challenges.
Okay.
And let's put one here. So that we recognize it's a challenge not to have a bakery, and yet there's an opportunity for a bakery. So maybe, Kevin, do you want to kind of just take the last
Yep.
bit of time to talk about
Process.
and structure?
Yep. You all have a handout, or hopefully you do, because I don't have any more.
Is
of
this
them
one here? Do you want it?
Yes. So there's a handout here. It's got the flow chart on the front and then the green on the back. So I'm going to spend the final few minutes talking through where we are in the process, both of this visioning process and then also in the process of moving forward to hopefully getting resources or getting organized for a lot of this work and for a lot of the opportunities that might be out there. On the back of this page, on the green page, there are 4 different steps here we listed out. These aren't necessarily precise, but we wanted to give you all a conceptual idea of where we are. So step 1 here is community input and learning. This is a lot of these focus groups that we're doing. So we got one more at the end of the month. The Chamber and RDI are working on getting more funding so that we can facilitate 2 larger community workshops where we bring all of this information back and work through the prioritizing of different opportunities based off of, Amy mentioned how easy something is and how much the payoff is, return versus investment sort of thing. Prioritizing the opportunities that you all want to work towards, or challenges you want to solve. So that would be more of step 1. And then step 2, and step 2 also community prioritizing and organizing. So this leads into like who is leading the work, who's involved. Can we get new people involved who aren't necessarily carrying a lot of the weight right now, but might be interested in working on one specific project or working towards a specific goal. Now we made this with the idea of the Main Street structure in mind. It does not have to be that, but step 3 is the formation of that regional Main Street organization, or the regional collaborative structure, so that when you all have challenges in one community or in a couple communities, you've got leadership and volunteers and team members from across the valley who can all work together to support a community, even if you don't live or work in that community. Because step 4 here is down at the bottom, and that's this accessing resources and implementing programs. And the reason why it's at the bottom is because it's much easier to go after, if you need grant funding, to go after grant funding, or if you need to do some sort of beautification project, you've got the organization and the leadership and the skill set and the vision to be able to go in that direction. I think one of the things that Amy and I often see when working with communities is that there's a desire to like fix everything right away. And I feel that too, wherever I am, but also in my own community, because we've got issues and we want them fixed. The challenge is we don't always have the resources to fix them right away. And we don't always have the right people in leadership, or the right number of people, even if it takes more people. So that's why this step 3 is so important, of having that right approach for collaboration, for working together through differences, and for having that shared vision, so that when you talk with county commission or nonprofit funders or any other potential partner, they can buy in and know that you all know where you're wanting to go, even if there's definitely going to be differences along the way. But if you're like, oh, we want to make our arts and culture industry stronger, oh, we really want to highlight our natural resources and our passion for the environment and the river, like you're able to do that. Ultimately, all of this will need to be very grassroots and driven by you all as locals here, so that it has the directions that you all want to go. And that's what we are here to do, is to help bring out some of that vision from you all, and we don't want to inject our thoughts on all of this, besides giving the guidance of what the Main Street approach is, because we think it could be helpful, but this is a grassroots style of visioning and implementing programs and going after resources and building each other up. So it is that step by step. Some steps could go first sometimes, but we can't jump forward too far if we want to build for some long-term success. Anything else you want to add for that?
I think so. The Main Street approach also, I mean, it's definitely volunteer driven. Just as, I mean, you all know, like, there's a lot of you all have stepped up in your community to do a lot of work, and maybe feel the burden of that. I think the Main Street approach is no different in the sense that it depends on, I mean, often you can get funding for one staff position, but then it depends a lot on volunteers generally to do the work. But it does give a structure to the volunteer work. So there's, like, you know, with the 4-point approach, there's usually 4 committees. So people would sign up, and then they would sort of know what, you know, like they would sign up for a particular committee. So it gives a little structure to volunteerism that I think sometimes helps, you know, that structure I think helps people find the thing that they want to work on, and is easier than if you don't have that structure.
Yeah, when we go through the prioritizing projects or prioritizing of opportunities, that'll be a good way for us to find out if there are areas where people are passionate about. Thanks, Judy.
Thank you.
That'll be a good way for people to find out where they want to be plugged in, or if they want to be plugged in, and where you all have the people power or the time and the energy to be able to invest. But it is part of that process that we got to work through.
Ken, as you've been tootling up and down the river on your Thursday drives,
Mhm.
do you have a sense that there's an increase in people wanting to be involved, or is it?
Yeah, it's interesting because just yesterday I talked to 2 different business owners who weren't at one of these sessions, and apparently someone or a couple of you have been talking about it in the community, and their response was really positive. They thought that we were headed in the right direction.
Are they gonna help?
Well, that's
I mean, everybody can think it's great, but
I have to continue-
I'm talking about getting people.
I have to continue to visit with them. I can't get them on one hook.
Gotcha.
But that is,
Johnny, I'll say, we all have struggled with that. Every organization we've been involved in trying to get younger people. I can remember when I was a young person, so many years ago, and Connie and I got involved in different organizations, and we were, you know, had a lot of young people back then that were, because Booster Club, for instance, we had a shared vision working with our kids. But that being said, the McKenzie Community Track, for instance, has reached out to some younger people, and we've got them, you know, in there. Now, their level of commitment isn't what I'd like to see, but putting them in some leadership roles, I won't say names, but it's helped, because now they have to come to a meeting because they willingly took a leadership role. And the same thing with the Community Land Trust. We've actually brought in, I think, at least 3 or 4 young McKenzie graduates that I hope will, you know, start to take more, and they have. I don't want to despair what they've been doing, but kind of, because the young folks haven't been modeled in some respects, is to jump into organizations, and so it's kind of on us to try to help model that, but we got to hook them. I agree. What kind of fly do you want to run that day to catch a young person and get them into the fold? So,
And then some of them are just like, Leah has surprised me, because she's now gonna be treasurer, taking over for Randy. But she's seen that modeled by us.
Yeah.
But trying to get the rest of the guides to do stuff, It's like stinking pulling teeth, and it's exhausting, because you're not only doing your work trying to do whatever, but constantly trying to drag these people along with you.
Yeah.
And,
One of my favorite projects that I was involved with in Beaverton was a project I didn't even have to do that much for because the students did it. They wanted to do a mural, and there was an art class, and they just needed a space to be able to do it. And so I was like, okay, we'll get you a wall, just like, don't leave this idea. But the students took it and ran. So there is a portion, like Cliff is saying, like, where can you just empower people to take leadership roles of their own? And that is I think that's a good topic of future conversation too, especially if we're able to do some of these broader community workshops where we can talk about leadership roles and getting people more involved.
well, that's what I'm trying, you talk about this broader whatever after you boil all of this down. I've never seen more people at a function.
Yep.
I've been to several city council meetings from Cottage Grove up to Coburg and Junction City and East and West, and the average participation age would be about the average of this room combined here. And so it's not just a local issue, it's a regional and statewide and country issue, that there's a definite generation issue with younger people taking involvement in communities. And I don't have the answer to it, it's just there.
You might
how to
remember-
deal with that.
You might remember, I don't know if you two folks were involved in the early discussions we had with Oregon Solutions, where we got some McKenzie students involved early on.
Yep.
And it was amazing to see those. Ken, you might remember that when we had
Oh, yeah.
4, 5, 6
Yeah.
of those.
Yeah.
What those kids did when you finally gave them a little bit of rope to try to hang themselves, and they went out
Right.
and surprised us all.
Yeah, yeah, I do remember that.
Yeah, so I think there's opportunity there, and I think some of these kids are willing if we just give them a little bit of rope.
So what I'm hearing is that people talking about kids. I'm really old. And we're talking about kids in school, but wait a minute, there are two other generations. There's people in their 20s and 30s and people in their 50s. And what, if anything, is being done to attract them? And, why aren't they interested? And I can't tell you why. I mean, we live up Pasture Road and it's relatively isolated. So our contacts outside of the families, not that many, and we're busy as all get out because we've got, family issues. So I have a 67-year-old niece. She's not in this country, she's in Douglas County. She's absolutely totally involved in Special Olympics. So I haven't seen or heard anything about Special Olympics up here at all. And what are people that age doing and why aren't they participating? I can't answer, I'm just posing the question.
Well, I do think we should make a note to talk more about leadership in the future. I think we do need to be wrapping it up. So Ken, I want to give you a chance to close this out and remind people about the next focus group.
Well, perfect segue here too, because that is going to be at the school. And we did pick a day when the students are going to be there before they leave for the break. So if you know any kids in McKenzie High School and you can rope them into this meeting, please do.
How about I talk to their senior counselor and see if we can get their leadership group there to that meeting.
Mm-hmm.
That'd be great.
Another thing about it, because it's recreation focused, I've invited the Forest Service and also Lane County Parks. And part of this discussion needs to be what we can do with those Lane County Parks, because we voted in a bond levy to improve those parks. $250,000 of that is going to this facility right here. What about these other parks out there? What would you like to see?
They are dragging their feet
Yes.
on Blue River,
Yes.
Forest Glen.
Yeah. So let's talk about
So
that.
opportunity is knocking.
And now they're backing off.
So that's a good teaser for next time.
Yeah. Hope to see you all.
It's like a cliffhanger at the end of a show. Come next time and see what
And
happens.
then to boot, Ken, they called me on, what's today? I don't know. They called me on Wednesday. Oh, hey, Johnny, so we're closing Hendricks Park every weekday for the next 2 weeks. It's like, you couldn't have chipped the wood before fishing season started. This is the busiest boat launch this time of year.
Do you want more?
Well,
Do you want to hand some out to people?
Yeah, they're frozen.
Did I misunderstand?
Thank you all for coming. I've got more flyers if you want to give any.
Yes, one more
With
asset.
respect to having density of
Oh, yeah, yeah, there are.
Okay.
Yeah, well,
I love your blouse, by the way.
I'm working on some specific projects.
Well, you know,
You guys
no.
did a great job.
Yeah, what are you gonna do about it, even if it did? Well, at the end of the day, sleep over.
Community, all together.